about the Biotic Explorer, a tool that has been developed within the context of BiCIKL. So just a few institutional aspects before moving to the objective, architecture and methods, evaluation and conclusion. So, SIB is an Elixir node. It's actually the Swiss Elixir node. And so the Elixir is a large research infrastructure in life science and bioinformatics in Europe. And within this research infrastructure, there are 5 data platforms. I happen to be co-leading one of them, which is the Elixir data platform, which is the home of the methodology to define the badging process of Elixir, as well as other bodies such as the Global Biodata Coalition. And for that, we use intensively the literatures. And this is also the home of resources such as the Europe PMC, and it's also the place where we decide badging that we may give to databases such as UniProt. So you may know that the UniProt knowledge base is maintained at SIB. And for SIB, we have about 860 bioinformaticians countrywide. We maintain more than 20 of these SIB resources, which could be curated database like UniProt KB, but also software as a service. Okay, so what is the objective of the Biotic Explorer? So we want to develop a data resource to navigate biotic interactions. And the way we want to do it, that is using the publications. That's why we call it evidence-based biotic interactions. We want to evaluate the quality of the new resource, and that should be item 2 and not item 1, but occasionally they are confused. Oh, I think that's the PDF. Yeah, we will survive with the PDF, but I think the PDF is broken while there was a version 5, which was the PowerPoint, and that would have been a better choice. Just, I'm asking if you can see the PowerPoint or not? PPT. Okay, we can go ahead. Okay, so the background, so biotic interactions are at the foundation of life and ecological sciences, and evidence are scattered across millions of biodiversity and biomedical publications. And the idea is to build something that is complementary to existing portals such as Globi, for those who know Globi. So the architecture and methods, so the idea is very simple. On this part here, we want a large document collections. So we of course start with PubMed Central, which means Medline and PubMed Central actually. And we also aggregate content which are specific to biodiversity, such as Platzi and others. We will look at this further down. Then we want to perform annotations. You see, we annotate all these things using very different vocabularies, species names, gene ontology, evidence code, biotic interactions. Then we store all this in a database, so it's going to be a triple store actually. So and at the end you want to display this, and this is the portal called Biotic Explorer. So we start with the annotation of the literatures, and we use that the biodiversity PMC, which is based on the SIB literature services. Everything is annotated with Open Tree of Life for species names, with link with Checklist Bank, Catalog of Life, and NCBI, which NCBI taxonomy, which will be soon added for viruses. And for the biotic interactions, then we use Robi, which is an extended version of Robi. So we build triplets, which means we have all co-occurrences within a given sentence, and we can also visualize things beyond one sentence, but we focus on sentences, and we have a few heuristics to do that. So the source collection is biodiversity PMC that you can access also directly. So it's a different resource, but that is the collection that we use. It's, as said at the beginning, it's based on PMC, okay? So this part, 7 million full text, 37 abstract is PMC. And then we also add supplementary data, about 20 millions, We also had a few other things. And we have this, what is specific here is about 1 million taxonomic treatment from Platzi, all PennSoft journals which are not in PMC, and we are adding more, you know, from European Journal of Taxonomy and others. Of course, this is all gathered here, annotated, and then you can have API, front GUIs, and a SPARQL endpoint. Okay, one more information about this biodiversity PMC is that, so this is PMC. We have something a bit bigger than PMC. It means Platzi, PennSoft, and all that stuff. This is still completely into JATS and BioC. This is JATS and BioC. And this is to be distinguished from database or literature repo like Google Scholar or OpenAlex, which are massively PDF. Okay, they may even have preprint, but the main issue is that this PDF, that one is completely machine readable. It can be annotated very precisely. Okay, this is a very important difference. So to show you what it means is that if I have a paper or an abstract or anything, and if you have this text here, then I can say, so if you look at this Ixodes ricinus here, tick, it's a tick, which can be a vector of many diseases, then you see that we can say that in position 14 of this particular sentence, which has a certain ID within this database, then we have an agrovoc concept, and this is the ID of the agrovoc concept. You see, we can do the same with Robbie, we can do the same with Echo, or we can do that with any database. This is NCBI taxonomy, and it is extremely precise, which is very difficult to achieve with PDF. Okay, so now we come to the evaluation, which is the most important part. So the idea is to have the database with good interactions, and it's automatically done. So sometimes it could be a conflict between fully automatic and still high quality. And that's why we do this evaluation. So we use two types of benchmarks. One is a random sample of BioTexplorer that we manually curated. The kappa agreement was 100%, so the human would agree. And then we also took a random set of triple from Globi. Okay, so it means you know, Globi is mostly based on tabular data. Okay, but it's relatively good quality. So we also use that one to compare. So we start with the manual one. So if we look at the within the passage, if there are relevant species interacting, so the quality is very moderate. It's only 1 out of 3. That is good. But then if you ask that within these 2 species in one sentence, you demand for a biotic interaction, then the bar do raise to 74%. It starts to be useful. So if this is an example at the bottom, you see here that, for instance, plants are pollinated by bees and flies. It's completely generic, but of course, bees and flies do not pollinate each other. Okay, this is just to show you the type of example that we have that would fail. Now, if you focus on that other type of evaluation, so we take Globi, and we try to see whether for 100 of the Globi biotic interactions, we can recover an evidence. And the conclusion is that for 85% of species interactions, we can recover the evidence. And if we also ask for the type of interactions, then it really reaches almost 100%. So from that point of view, the system can be taken as a gold standard, at least if you want to recover evidence from Globi. Okay, this is where we are. So we know we need to work on maybe reducing the noise in the data database, and this is what we are doing now. So I bet I still have like a couple of minutes. So this is the database. You can go online. It's about 1 million occurrences. We work very well on some use cases like the bat interaction with the CTAF and DISCO working group. So this is, for instance, a positive one. You see, roosting. Roosting is so specific that there is almost no noise across all the database. You know, others are a bit more ambiguous. That's for the evaluation, and now comes the conclusion. So I think the results are approaching the utility threshold. and believe me, for a couple of years, it was really not at that level. The resource is quite consistent with Globi because it's good news. It's the only, let's say, silver standards that we have, actually. So we plan to grow the biodiversity PMC universe. We are teaming up now with the big publishers, you know, Frontiers and Elsevier and all that stuff. We will soon have the SPARQL endpoint. It's already there, but it's only a fraction of the collection that is there. We're going to have viruses within a few weeks. We know we need to also work on specific rules, like, you know, pollinators do not pollinate each other. We know that. It's trivial, but it's computers do not know it. And we're going to work on developing classifiers to discard some of the inconsistencies. And probably this is very consistent with BiCIKL Plus because we want to combine together language models and SPARQL endpoints. Thank you very much for your attention. Arigato gozaimasu.
Thank you, Patrick. Very much on time. Questions? Are there some questions from the audience? Okay. Yeah, Klaus?
Maybe a quick question. You mentioned rules and perspective on your last slide. Where do you get the rules from? And how do you want to do this? Is this a kind of triple store you want to feed in, or?
I try to go back, but I can't. Okay, it's coming. Actually, the reason why we can start with the low-hanging rules is because within the Robbie ontology, there are only about 80 types of interactions. And I think if you look at the Globi, it's not 80. Globi is maybe, I mean, with all the due respect for Globi, it's maybe 5 interactions, you know, like host-virus relationships, predation chains, and maybe a couple of them. So if we would focus on 5 of them, we are probably at the level of 80% of Globi. And of course, the pollinator will be a trivial one. So the rules will be written manually. We're just going to block some trees, you know. We're going to say that plants do not pollinate each other, and the same for the pollinators, the animal, you know. So I think if we want to focus on just a few known biotic interactions, it's very manageable.
Yeah, we have a minute for additional questions, if any. If not, we go to the next presentation. I will take it for Donat Agosti, who is not here. This is a presentation of the activities of Platzi. Standing on the shoulders of giants. Okay. So what is Platzi? Platzi is a non-governmental organization, NGO, based in Switzerland, but very well known in the biodiversity informatics community for the unique services and tools they have developed over the last maybe 15 years. What they do mostly extraction of data from the literature, but around those main activity, there is a lot of services of dissemination and reuse of that data. Just weeks ago, we had a meeting organized by Platzi in the Disentis monastery in Switzerland, when we discussed the future of the biodiversity informatics for the literature after the 10 years after signing the Bushu Declaration, which was signed 10 years ago by the Pro-iBiosphere. This is another EU project partners. And now after 10 years, we had to discuss what we do next. So Platzi are active partners, members of BiCIKL. They also not only extract data, but they annotate data and semantically enrich data and disseminate data. They are founders of the biodiversity literature repository at Zenodo, CERN. a repository for fair data liberated from the literature. They are partners together with Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics and also Pensoft in the creation of biodiversity PMC infrastructure, something really unique, which puts together the biodiversity and biomedical literature into one data pool. They also provide provenance for the taxonomics names, a link to the taxonomic treatment. Treatment is a description of taxa. They also so they provide that data in a form that can be directly used to create biodiversity knowledge graphs, and also provide a citation of taxonomic treatments in the publications, because all their treatments they extract from the literature have, of course, unique identifiers. So, as I said, the main activities of Platzi is data liberation. They use this term because the data in PDFs are actually imprisoned. You can read them, you can see them, but you cannot use them so easily because they are not structured data. Also, they extract data from 46 journals published in XML by Pensoft, and directly put the data into treatment bank and biodiversity literature repository. They also disseminate data and provide GBF ENA, as we have seen in the previous presentation here, Workflow Online, biodiversity literature repository, biodiversity PMC, with the data they extract from the literature. And also at GBF, there is already a button which is designed to provide feedback on the data, a kind of curation mechanism. And also last 2-3 years, they do active community building and community increasing capacity activities, training courses, and so on. It is rather complex chart which explains the quite complicated but very efficient and useful workflow of Platzi, how they extract data from the PDFs and then how they distribute the data to the different data aggregators and users. What they extract, what Platzi extracts from PDF. First, taxonomic treatments. Well, the first actually is the article metadata they take, because all research objects like treatments, like reference lists, tables, all images, and also material citations. Material citations are specimen records which are cited within the publication. And all those different research objects they extract and separate from the publication, of course, are linked to the article metadata, so they can be cited through the authors of the article and the publisher. I already have shown this publication. Actually, here is the Platzi workflow, data from the PDFs. Here is the Pensoft workflow, data published in the XML, and in OpenBiodiff triple store, both data from Platzi and from Pensoft are being converted into RDF, into a triple store called OpenBiodiff, currently containing data from more than 52,000 biodiversity articles and more than 500,000 taxonomic treatments extracted from Platzi. There are several new developments. Most of them were developed in BiCIKL and also in another project of Platzi called Arcadia, funded by Arcadia funders. For example, at Zenodo in the biodiversity literature repository, there is a lot of new features like zooming out the images they put there. We also submit all our images to the same repository. Also, they now adopted a Mirador viewer and data annotation service called AnnoStore to annotate documents, PDF documents in the biodiversity literature repository so that the community can use the service to support this kind of data liberation. They also provide user interface and administration control on the biodiversity literature repository. through user interface. Also, anyone can see the rights administration for reuse of the articles or the subarticle elements extracted from the articles, because unfortunately some articles are still under closed access. They can be submitted to the repository, but they cannot be, let's say, used as freely as open access articles. Treatment Bank now has advanced API, which can be configured upon external request, and also more efficient search and browsing engine for taxonomic treatments. This is an important workflow which has been developed in BiCIKL. At the day of publication, Platzi extracts all taxon descriptions. Among them are many new taxa, new species descriptions. They submit them, let's say, next day to Checklist Bank. They are being indexed by Checklist Bank and appear in the taxonomic backbone of GBF and already in Catalog of Life. So this is very, very important services of Platzi. During BiCIKL, they provided nearly 52,000 checklists to Checklist Bank completely automatically extracted from the literature. All treatments which are liberated from the literature are exported into biodiversity PMC and also in Open BioDiv Triple Store. And all that really huge corpus of literature, also demonstrated by Patrick, will be object of future further development through artificial intelligence tools for discovery and reuse of data, such as biotic interactions, which we have seen in the previous presentation. What are the next steps in, let's say, in the Platzi activity, which are very much connected to the BiCIKL process as a whole? We want to expand into new communities based on taxa. For example, that 1 million treatment corpus, which is currently available, 1 million taxonomic treatments, this is a really important milestone in the activity of Platzi, are distributed through different taxa. And now we intend to do this, but more on taxon-based basis. Let's say to liberate data from large monographs or revisions for large taxa, so that to make this the same activity but in more systematic way, so that to cover a larger number of taxa. Community building process is continuing by establishing offices in and training courses in Brazil, South Africa, and in other places in the plan. An important activity is the workbench for data curation, which was also created in BiCIKL, which provides interface to the community to annotate the data, to correct the data, and submit the corrections back to the source. And also important milestone in our joint activities is launching the Decentis roadmap. This is a kind of strategic plan for the next 10 years in the field of biodiversity literature, how we use it, how we publish it, how we reuse the data published there. So the conclusion is that standing on the shoulders of giants now is much easier thanks to the activities and innovations of Platzi. And understanding the giants means to turn the data they have created over more than 250 years of data accumulation in biodiversity into fair, accessible, and open data. This is the main point. Thank you very much. On behalf of Platzi. Yeah, we have time for some questions or comments. If not, then we go to the next publication. This is Jutta, please.
Okay, I'm going to stay within the realm of publication and publishing and data reuse and data linking. And but I ask you to shift your thoughts towards data governance now. And so we are a group of members of the Biodiversity Heritage Library of CETAF, the Consortium of European Taxonomic Facilities on the spinach. And actually, I'm not the only one here at the conference. I would like to point out two of my collaborators. One is Patricia Mergen sitting here, and Mariko Kageyana sitting over there. So, and yeah, in the last talk by Donat, Donat was also one of the co-authors. So, so shifting gears towards data governance. Scientific publications provide a wealth of peer-reviewed, high-quality data that have been maintained over time, resulting in data persistence. The mobilization of data preserved in scientific publications is hindered, however, by distinct copyright legislation contexts for publications versus the data that they contain. Moreover, copyright legislations continue to lack harmonization across jurisdictions. Their implementation or interpretation is difficult, and the applicable national legal scope can be uncertain. These are not problems specific to our communities, but to everyone working with data in an international context. Policymakers are aware of the situation, and development efforts from many sides and jurisdictions result in a currently very dynamic national to international and multilateral legal landscape. Around 2022, and very aware that this started much earlier, we started to investigate two questions that are of key importance to our communities. What are the conditions for the reuse of scientific data from copyrighted publications, and do the data themselves fall under copyright protection? A key result of our work is that data themselves are not copyrightable. From a legal perspective, data are not categorized as individual products of creativity and therefore cannot be copyrighted. This has been, for example, clearly laid out in a ruling by the US Supreme Court in 1991. The law makes a distinction between the empirical data that are not copyrightable and the copyrightable works created with and around them. Thus, once lawful access, for example, in the form of a subscription, has been obtained to a publication, the copyrightable work, the data within the journal, the book, and so on can be freely extracted, deposited into an open data repository, and reused. Much of our work has been to understand the practical consequences of implementing the EU Copyright Directive from 2019. So without having the time to go into detail here, please ask us about the currently widely discussed exemption in Article 4.3 and the impact of the draft recommendation on digital sequence information to be submitted to the Conference of the Parties of the UN Convention on Biological Diversity next month. It is a very dynamic environment. So if you have questions, please approach us. Based on the outcome of our work a year ago, BiCIKL, CETAF, and Spinach published a joint statement with the following recommendations. We recommend that authors and publishers publish works openly using a Creative Commons attribution license or by waiving copyright and setting the works into the public domain. Always explicitly state that the data themselves are in the public domain, using a public domain mark. We recommend that publishers use a publishing process that marks up publications for increased reuse and mobilization. And we call to authors and publishers to clearly and comprehensively state the provenance of the data, authors of cited works, and contributions of co-authors to the current publication. So what do these recommendations mean in practical consequence for going forward? How do you implement them? First, retain the copyright to your publication. Do not sign it off to publishers. And use copyright licenses that enable open access and reuse. Prefer and look for diamond open access publishing options. For your publications as creative works, licenses are appropriate and a sensible governance approach. However, such copyright licenses do not make sense for data, since they are not copyrightable. Here, we suggest to associate a public domain mark with the data as a more appropriate and explicit governance statement that provides clarity to users. Importantly, follow best scientific practice and our scientific community's norms of providing full attribution and provenance information, no matter if an attribution license requires you to do so, or a license doesn't state attribution explicitly. Attribution fosters openness, fairness, and equity within the scientific community and beyond. Moreover, data are only meaningful and reusable if they retain their context. Data quality assurance is dependent on attribution and provenance. The resulting transparency enables good provenance and accountability. Part of this is that attribution supports needs for visibility and quantification of professional and scientific contributions and impact. Thus, as authors and publishers, foster transparency and visibility by supplying a machine actionable format for your publication citation, using, for example, the CFF format or the Tadwig YAML format. Looking forward, we require more discussions about what the global digital commons, a governance framework originating in economics, means for our communities and how it might move us towards a sustainable open science environment. Data, information, and knowledge are not a free-for-all. Open for grabs without consideration of the context from which they originate, the services that make them available, and the many people that maintain them. Currently, we experience in our discussions, infrastructures, and interactions, up to policy negotiations, decisions, and legislation, a tension between open data and science aspirations, and a range of needs or tendencies to impose restrictions on data. One way to maybe cut through this Gordian knot might be to recognize that data are symbiotic goods. As symbiotic goods, we might unlock their power for a transition to a sustainable, nature-positive system. And here at the conference, we have heard situations where people already could show that these symbiotic goods are actually quite real in our community. A concrete step towards implementing a global digital commons framework can be the use of governance labels. We might adapt the local context labels and notices developed by indigenous peoples and local communities to our scientific and professional context. Such governance labels have the function to inform users about ethical and social norms associated with data providers and origins. In this way, We will link up with and integrate our efforts with the engagement of stakeholders worldwide and policymakers for the fair and equitable access to and use of biogeodiversity and the protection of our planet. So please contact us if you would like to learn more about science policy work, data governance and legislation, or even if you're considering to getting involved in this dynamic area together with a small, friendly group of people. Thank you very much for your interest.
Are there questions? No. Yes, Jose?
Thanks, Jutta, and the team for doing this study. Have you looked into data that has been enriched or derivatives? For example, there's lots of interest for knowledge graphs. They're not really raw data. They're almost, a knowledge graph, you could think of it as an artifact. So where does the boundary fall? So at what time does this copyright perspective stop being applicable?
That's a good question. Okay. So the zone between so works, creative works are copyrightable, and data are not. But there's a continuum between both, and it's really hard to decide where am I. Do I need to consider copyright or not? So this is one of the reasons why we propose to the community to be very explicit that data are open and to make our works open by using a CCC attribution license or even putting them in the public domain, so that the users can be really, really clear or safe in a way that they can reuse the data without thinking about this continuum between am I in the copyright spectrum or not.
Ruch?
I'm slightly confused about the idea that data can't be copyrighted. So you cited the American law. Under American law, it can't. I'm not saying it can't be, but there's more to that than just the US, obviously. Now, my understanding under the EU, you can copyright the structure of a database, and once it's created, you can automatically get a sort of, you can restrict the rights of access to that for 15 years. So there's more to this. So assertions that data can't be copyright, that's something that should be disputed.
Well, so databases have what is called kind of like a weak protection. Actually, it's not the real copyright. It's kind of like a database protection, and there are discussions about how protected they are. And apparently, also the perspective on EU database protection has changed over time. So it's debatable. Again, we have this continuum. We don't know where we are legally. And to provide legal clarity, the easiest way for our community for reuse would be to say it's open. However, it's also like, to show the data themselves, like when you have, so data sets might also be under some protection, but data themselves, they are like the words in text. They are not copyrightable. So the question is really, when do you have a database? Is a table in a publication already kind of like a mini database? Is it creative? So the data themselves, the empirical data are not. And we are, okay, if you would like to know more, we are about to publish a manuscript in the European Journal of Taxonomy where we discuss this in detail.
Can I just follow up? Because I guess I always think the whole legal discussion, surely what matters is we can say whatever we want, like Plaza can say whatever you want. What's going to be the test case is some rich company says that data is ours, and then the case will be decided. So my concern is it's very easy to say what would be nice, but the reality, you know, until somebody actually gets sued, we won't really know.
Yeah, but yeah, no, exactly. That is a problem for us. But for our own community, we can make sure that we and our users are safe. So.
Yeah. Next question.
I take you back to a statement Jerry Garcia made many years ago, that data just wants to be free. About 25 years ago, there was an attempt to set up a system through the World International Property Organization to make databases copyrighted, and the ownership was not with the creators of the information, but the purchasers and the funders of the databases. There was a big argument through the White Bar, and it was due to a couple of small countries, Singapore being one of them, that started to make questions and to stop it happening. There was also a continual rolling copyright on it. It wasn't 10 years or 20 years or something like that. It was shortly after that that the European Union brought in some more restrictive things, and but I think we need to look at what the WIPO has on that, because that's an international treaty on copyright related to databases and the contents of databases. But as just said here, until somebody takes it to court, we really don't know. But it's been pushed very hardly by telecommunication companies and things like that, that they want to be able to database the contents of databases. But one thing that wouldn't work is global transport, because they need free data to exchange through the meteorological organisations so that they know what weather conditions are. And they were one group that really fought against that treaty.
So maybe, thank you very much for this background. Maybe another reason why we should use the public domain dedication, because once either a work or a data is put into in the public domain, it cannot be copyrighted anymore. So any global player who wants to copyright our data, it's not possible anymore. But for that, you need to make it explicit. You need to say, this data is in the public domain.
We have just a minute for one more question. Dmitry, from GBF Secretariat, it's your question or?
Lyubo, there's one comment on this from the online audience.
Yeah.
From the GBF Secretariat, there's a question: if data can't be copyrighted, how would you protect data about type specimens that should be non-derivable in scientific scope to ensure to stay unchanged as references?
I'm not completely sure I understand the question. So if we put the information of type specimens in the public domain, then...
How you protect them from changes, from editing, correcting the reference or something like that, yeah?
By providing provenance and attribution and being very transparent about the steps that the information has gone through, and also not deleting alternative annotations. I would guess.
Yeah, there's a comment on that from Donat, who says copyright is not about data integrity. There are scientific rules, the code, like for example, that govern this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, scientific ethics, so to say. Yeah.
Exactly.
Dmitry, 30 seconds. No? Okay. Okay, we have to go to the next presentation then. So the next on stage is Genuar Nunez-Vega from the Technical University of Braunschweig, Germany, who will tell us about how does science give back.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm also a research associate in the German collection of microorganisms and cell cultures. Thank you for this opportunity. I would like to share the work that we have been doing. The title is How Does Science Give Back? I want to present you a pilot method that we developed to measure non-monetary benefits sharing under the Nagoya Protocol. In many countries, researchers should request a permit for collecting samples. This could be any different sort of permits. When the scientific project collects DNA, RNA, biochemical compounds from non-human organisms, well, this project may require a genetic resource collecting permit. In the UN, the United Nations context of the Convention on Biological Diversity and its Nagoya Protocol, countries can decide if they regulate or not the collection of genetic resources. For those countries that decide to do so, they negotiate access terms and benefits that will be shared. This is commonly known as access and benefit sharing, or ABS for short. So these ABS permits are a little bit different from all the other permits. If we take a look in the access part of the ABS, we know that there are 141 parties to the Nagoya Protocol, countries that are parties. Not every country regulates access. And for those who regulate access, sometimes the rules could differ between countries. So in general, it's challenging for researchers sometimes. But in the other side, the benefit sharing part, this benefit can be monetary or non-monetary. Not every research reach the commercial use, so the research outputs can be considered a type of non-monetary benefits. However, there is a risk here because non-monetary benefit could be invisible for policymakers. Sometimes reporting benefit sharing may not happen at all. So these outputs become completely not accessible, not used by policymakers. So in our project, the question is it possible to quantify non-monetary benefit sharing? Is that even possible? And that's the goal of the project, examining trends in non-monetary benefit sharing. The documents related to the ABS permit, like mutual agreed terms, are not available. However, the research results are typically found in scientific publications. So the hypothesis that we have in our project is that the existing scientific infrastructure could be used for measuring some types of non-monetary benefit sharing at a global scale. So we developed a pilot method to quantify this type of non-monetary, this type of benefits. We use the Europe PMC text mining platform to search for ABS permit codes. That's what we use. We create a database connecting scientific publications citing ABS permits. We needed a list of permits available to look for that and to make this connection. So we use the ABS Clearinghouse, which is a CBD platform that has more than 5,000 IRCCs, which is international recognized certificates of compliance, which it's a ABS permit code. But we also, for countries that are part of the Nagoya Protocol, but we also use ABS permit, national ABS permit code. We apply a manual quality control, which is we make sure that the publication was using genetic resources and that the permit that we found in the full text is actually an ABS permit. So in order to make a proper connection in that sense. With this database, we were able to measure 3 global indicators. Research results has a number of research and development results, scientific publications that arise from this ABS permit, this is a CBD terminology in general, like the sentence itself. We also try to use an indicator that shows the research result relevant from priority areas. In this case, we choose to count the number of publications that arise from ABS permits that are related to conservation, sustainable use, food security, and public health. And also international collaboration using publication that has author from the author that provides the genetic resources. I would like to show you trends and these indicators from our database, how the information looks like. And this is the composition and geographical distribution of publication that we have that cites ABS permits on it. So we have in our database 665 articles with ABS permits on it. almost 700 ABS permits identified, or unique codes identified. And if you remember, we have in the ABS clearinghouse more than 5,000 IRCC, it's 5,000 ABS permits, but in the literature, we were able to find only 28 of them. So it's not used in these publications in our database. Or we were not able to identify them in the full text, right? They are not cited. We found in our database, we identified 26 countries, and you can see them distributed in the map. When it comes to classify this publication in different priority areas and categories, we are talking about the field of research classification, which is a challenging task in general, and there is not a unique way to do this. However, we decided to remap the OpenILEX topics that are available into these 5 categories, the 4 that I mentioned before, and others, when it falls into another category. In our database, we found that public health and conservation are the most common topics, or the topics where these publications are more related to those 2 topics. For international collaboration, we use authorship as a proxy. So we use that information. And what we found is that most publications include at least one author from the country that provides the genetic resources. So you can see in green, in the pie chart, this is the biggest section of the pie chart. And as well, you can see how these numbers, not just the number of publication, but also the international collaboration, has been increasing over time. So we see this pattern. And at this point, it's worth to mention that including author from the country that is providing the genetic resources is not mandatory in every country. So this is more a decision that happens in the moment of the publication. It happens, but some few countries decided that it's mandatory, but not everyone. So if the publication is not included in-country authors, doesn't mean that it's bad, but what we can see here is a trend in this sense. So what we have here is some trends with these global indicators. These are not the only possible non-monetary benefits indicator, but these ones are showing us how the scientists are, how science is giving back on this type of non-monetary benefits. Also, we found another useful information in this sense. We saw how the scientific community is citing ABS permits on publications. So we saw some practices that happen. So in this case, I'm showing you the percentage of articles that cite different sections, that are cited in different sections in publications. So what we found is that researchers are using a variety of sections to cite the ABS permit, not a unique one. So materials and methods are more commonly used, acknowledgement, but you can see that the list is quite large in this sense. So there is not a standardization in the place where the ABS permits is cited in a publication. Another thing that I already mentioned is that national ABS permits code are more used than other IRCC, despite the layers is standardized. Well, I would like to know, how do you cite an ABS permit? Let me know how that happens in your projects. Well, take-home messages as a proof of concept. This methodology can be used with the current scientific infrastructure to quantify some type of non-monetary benefit shares. It's something that we showed in these results, and a better ABS permit citation will make easier to quantify non-monetary benefit share. In the scientific community, we need to establish better practices to ensure that the visibility of this non-monetary benefit sharing. Well, the idea is to present these method and indicators in the CVD Coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework as part of this monitoring framework, and also in the next meeting that will happen in Cali. I would like to thank our students, assistants, and colleagues in the Department of Science Policy and Internationalization as well in DSMC. Thank you very much.
questions or comments? Jutta?
Thank you very much for this very interesting talk and your proposal. I'm wondering, for this non-monetary benefit sharing, are you thinking about the indicators of the global monitoring framework, like Target 13? Is that kind of like where you think these kind of, they are, your measurement, your statistics could be used as indicators there? Or are you actually thinking about the latest negotiation at the CBD, where I only could read the summary, and what I read was a bit scary, that they want, so it seems our community is falling into one of the sectors that might be considered to need to pay for the use of digital sequence information. And then your kind of like, your calculations could be used to kind of try to figure out how much we need to pay and things like that. And this whole concept for me is really scary. And it shows, to me, we need to do much more science policy to find our way there, especially when we want to link out. So basic questions, are you thinking in the direction of Target 13 indicators, which I would find really great, or in the direction of, okay, how do we pay?
No, definitely. What we are proposing is new indicators for Goal C, that it's asking for countries to quantify monetary and non-monetary benefit sharing, and related to Target 13 as well. So this monitoring or this framework doesn't have a way to measure that. So we are proposing a new method for that. Remember that we are proposing a method to quantify non-monetary benefit sharing from genetic resources, not from DSI in this particular methodology. So there is also discussions about how to measure non-monetary benefit sharing from the DSI. So in this case, I'm showing particularly about genetic resources. And yeah, the idea is to give this method to the parties, to countries, to consider it and include it in the monitoring framework.
Good to hear that. The thing is that when policymakers see something that works in one area, they like to take it over into a different area. But good to hear, and these indicators are very much needed. Thanks.
Thank you. I know there is not much time, but yeah, the idea is not trend, also showing what we are doing.
We have 2 minutes, but we have two questions, so I think.
Please.
So please, yeah. Yes, you are. Okay. The comment after that.
Sorry. Thank you, Genuar, for your talk. In your study, have you found any correlation between the percentage of the participation of authors from the country of origin and how restricted is the ABS permits in the country?
Not. The short answer is no. We haven't done any, probably not many correlations yet, considering the size of the database we have, but also that every country is different in that sense. So how to measure that as well? I will open to hear how to measure how difficult it is or the restrictions. I'm not quite sure how to do that. But yeah, no, we are not doing that kind of things. Every country is different, as I mentioned, so it will be challenging in any ways.
Yeah, and Walter?
Yeah, there was a comment or a question from Esteban Marentes Herrera. Do you find people using the GBN permit extension to put the information of permits?
One of my interests of being here is to discover more about what is missing in our methodology, how can we improve it. I tried, and I definitely try to use different tools and information that I already hear here in this conference. In that particular case, I were not able to use it properly or extract information. Not even citing in the documents in the publication that we search for. So either because I didn't look properly or better, or because they are not citing that. So I'm open to hear suggestions about how to do it better or in the proper way. But no, I were not able to do it.
Yeah, okay, so our time is over. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gunnar. And So next talk is virtual, right? And it is from a research group from Norway.
I don't see the speaker online at the moment, so.
It's recorded or? It's pre-recorded.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Data? Yes. Yes, but so the speaker is not online. We have no.
The speaker is Erik Kusch.
Yes, Erik Kusch from Norway. Online. Yes.
And we didn't receive a presentation or a recording from him.
Huh? It's a very interesting talk, very much related to the BiCIKL process, but probably we won't have it, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. Probably.
Yeah, okay. It should be about collaboration and coordination principles across the European Biodiversity Research Infrastructure Consortium. So very much related to BiCIKL, but yeah. Yeah.
Lubo? Yes. Lubo?
Yeah.
Doug is typing the answer 1 second.
Ah. Will be.
He's on the case.
Will be.
Norway is efficient.
Yeah. It's not available. Huh? What we should do? We have no presentation. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a recording for it. Movie data is already up
So
there. So
you have a record, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Okay, that's what's my question. We have the recording, so we'll have this presentation. Yeah, please. Yeah, please do it.
Hello and welcome. Picking up from where the BiCIKL project left off in mapping how different research infrastructures in Europe use different metadata standards, I, as well as some others out of the BioDT project, have been looking into how biodiversity research infrastructures within the European context collaborate and coordinate with one another, and whether there might exist some principles and guidelines which we can give as an outcome of our BioDT project to inform how to improve ongoing relations between biodiversity research infrastructures. Firstly, for all of those not in the know on what a biodiversity research infrastructure is, which I assume will hardly be anyone in this audience, biodiversity research infrastructures, which I will be referring to as BRIs or BioRIs for the remainder of this talk, provide diverse services ranging from data provisioning, resources, those being computational or manpower, all the way to different sorts of equipment, as well as knowledge hubs and other web hosting services, you name it. These BioRIs can be single site systems or distributed systems, which we can see on the right-hand side of the target RIs, those being ELTA, GBIF, LifeWatch, and DISCO for our purposes within BioDT, show some fragmentation geographically speaking. However, the question arises how fragmented European BioRIs even are. We could look at this through the lens of the research they support, the interoperability of their operations and services, or the collaboration between and across them. Now, given that I don't have a full half an hour to talk here, I will be focusing on just the collaboration and coordination of the BioRIs within Europe, the target ones, that is. And so I will be focusing today on how well infrastructures within Europe communicate and collaborate within, across, and outside of the BioRI spectrum. And so for this purpose, I've put together a survey with which we can assess the different communication categories, those being within a BioRI, across different BioRIs, and then ultimately facing the public. The survey that I have put together ranks these from 0 to 5 on a Likert scale, with a self-assessment identifying by each BioRI and its national representative how well one communicates and collaborates within one's own BioRI, across the spectrum of the 4 bio-RIs in question, and ultimately how well the RI communicates with the public, I am assessing through the response rate to the survey request. On the right-hand side, you can see the results for communication category 1 and 2 within and across bio-RI communication, and you will immediately see that bio-RIs collaborate much stronger within their network than outside of their networks. And while that is not at all surprising, it is still something worth considering when we want to put together a comprehensive set of guidelines of how to improve coordination and collaboration across the European bio-RI spectrum. But you might now be wondering, what about the response rate towards the public? And for this, I unfortunately don't have terrific news, as you can see here graphed out over time with milestones of the initial email inviting responses to the survey, as well as a second email, and finally a third email sent to the boards of each individual bio-RI. We find very middling response rates, indicative of not very well established communication lines towards the public, where GBIF is only leading the pack because I was present at a in-person meeting of GBIF European node staff, who I could actually sit down and have answer the 10-minute duration questionnaire that I have put together. And so I have to say that bio-RIs are not responsive to public inquiries, and finding corresponding information across bio-RI web pages, the headers of which you can see on the right-hand side here, is difficult for someone who doesn't know in which place to look, and which posed quite the challenge for me starting this project in assessing where to find relevant information across the bio-RIs. However, there are some commonalities across these web pages. And setting this aside, I would like to return to the question of what can we do about the fragmentation? So why do we communicate better within RI networks than across RI networks or to the public? And subsequently ask whether we can address this issue. First of all, I think the topics that different and services that different bio-RIs target ultimately set a different communication style, a different set of information that is being communicated. And so right there, we have a source of fragmentation. We could certainly address this issue by wanting every bio-RI to focus on the same things. However, I don't think that's in our interest, as each bio-RI finds very different use cases and end user groups which they target quite effectively. And so I don't think we should do anything about this to improve our communication and coordination. Subsequently, every one of the bio-RIs, given that they work on different topics, also use different vocabularies to talk about not just their own operations, but also their end user groups. We can do something about this by harmonizing data standards, for example. However, my chief area of concern within my project is the means and styles of communication, and we can address these. And I think that in the spirit of TADWIC, the masters of standardization of data, we should maybe think about standardizing our communications just as much. So how do we communicate then if it's not being standardized? Well, we communicate within and across bio-RIs by different means. For example, some RIs use mailing lists, which are very difficult to get a hold of when you have been added to a new mailing list and understanding what's been going on. Also, you might miss mailing lists without knowing they exist. Social media or forums might be used for doing communications. However, oftentimes when you're added to a chat, you do not get access retroactively to messages that have been sent prior. So it becomes really difficult for you to understand what has been happening in every bio-RI for the time that you haven't been a member of them yet, let alone trying to understand what is happening within a bio-RI when you're not a member of them, which is where our biggest downfall lies in communication and coordination. Lastly then, at least for GBIF Norway, and I think the same is true for every other bio-RI, we have a regrettable oral tradition that is being passed along, which makes for good communication within each individual bio-RI node, but makes it so the information contained within the oral tradition is just not accessible to anyone outside of this group. So how can we build more standardized, more open, accessible, and trackable through time communications? Well, I would suggest that to build a unified communication or coordination platform, GitHub might be something that we would like to take a look at. Is it the one to rule them all? Probably not, but I think it's a very good start. For one, using GitHub is free, completely open access. We can use templates to standardize communication, and it is already a part of most daily BioRI operations. On the other hand, using GitHub can be very cumbersome, particularly for things that it's not directly designed for and thus requires training because it is not made for organizational communication, which is what we are after. However, if we put a layer of abstraction between GitHub itself and the end user, those being BioRI staff, as well as non-BioRI staff, via an interface, we might be able to alleviate all of the downsides while losing none of the benefits. And so I, together with Thomas, who should be in attendance himself, so say hi to him, hi Thomas, from me as well, we have put together a Shiny app that does exactly that, to standardize communication and coordination in one unified interface through GitHub. This is, and I need to stress this right up front, a proof of concept not meant to replace official BioRI web pages, but rather to supplement them and show how we could more effectively coordinate and collaborate between BioRIs. First of all, we get the commonalities that I've identified across the different BioRI web pages in individual tabs. We then get an introduction to each individual BioRI and its services right on the landing page, and have the ability to switch between BioRIs for ease of access of comparing information and switching from one to the other. When we go to each individual tab, we find that entries are standardized HTML style, so don't look as rough as they could. And also we see not only GitHub issues, but also comments allowing for ongoing discussions on these boards. In addition, we also have an event tab, which is linked to the project tab, where we find a calendar overview that shows us when things are happening, with an agenda for each event that is happening, as well as the opportunity to export BiCIKL objects for easy drag and drop into your individual calendars, making it easy to follow up on what's happening within each BioRI and take part, even when one isn't listed on, for example, mailing lists. There also does exist some BioRI exclusive functionality, because these boards need to remain functional for the BioRIs themselves and not just be an info dump for the public. First of all, through the authentication via the login button via the GitHub account of each person that has to be linked to the BioRI GitHub organizational account, which many BioRIs already do, we unlock an additional add event button, for example, with which we can then create events via a standardized mask, thus not having to interface with GitHub itself. In development also is a BioRI internal discussion board that will not be shown to the public, as well as add entry buttons for news, projects, as well as the help desk, where help desk issues can be authored by non-BioRI organization members as well. And as a matter of fact, I expect that to be most of the authors there. Additional buttons that we want to implement are the delete entry or event, edit entry or event, as well as the comment button for each of the different communications here. Since I am already running out of time, I would just now like to come to what you can still look forward to. First of all, the communication interface will be polished with all of these changes that I've just detailed having been implemented, fully functioning, as well as supplemented by a guide for setting up the GitHub structure necessary by the end of this month. Secondly, we are working on a preprint as well as a peer-reviewed publication of guidelines and recommendations, which will delve deeper into communication and collaboration, as well as end-user interaction and publication tracking, and finally also data interoperability and metadata standard compatibility, the topics that I mentioned previously I didn't have time for today. If you would like to get involved with this ongoing work, I would wholeheartedly invite you to become a beta tester for the communication interface with your BioRI node or research group if you are at all interested in this. If you have any comments or concerns or criticisms, feel free to reach out to me virtually or to Thomas, who should be in person attending. And finally, I need to stress again that the purpose of the communication interface is not to get rid of BioRI web pages, but rather to show how we can move forward and supplement the current web pages without asking everyone for full redeploy of their web representations. And with that, I would like to cede the rest of my time. I am online right now and happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Questions to Erik? He's not online, I think. Well, anyway, comments. If not, then maybe other comments on the BiCIKL presentations or questions? Dmitry?
The DSI topic and all about access and benefit sharing is a very hot potato and will get hotter. Of course, interests of the countries with high biodiversity countries shouldn't be neglected, but what I would like this community to remember is the Bermuda Principles. This stuff is from the 90s, and it's kind of the dream of Bermuda Principles that every sequence generated for whatever reason should be released within 24 hours was fueled by the dream that once we sequence the human genome, we'll be forever healthy and happy. It didn't quite happen that way. It didn't quite happen that way, but that dream driving the open data movement has been so powerful, and it fueled the whole INSDC movement. And I believe the origins of GBIF and the series of Tadwig meetings benefited from this dream-based vision. It's idealistic, utopian, but it works. I don't think it's Tadwig game to join the weaving the red tape. We should find solutions, but we shouldn't be the people walking into the trap of building restrictions when we're powered by the open data movement. Sorry, I'm a bit emotional here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Jutta?
So if I might respond to it, well, as you could see from my talk, I also think we need to stay open science and open data. At the same time, I think we also need to provide a benefit back to the provider countries and the provider communities. And one thing that I proposed were these governance labels that have been proposed by IPLCs. Another idea that has been brought forward by the Global South to the CBD is to have a general global tax based on commercialized products from biodiversity, or to do it through the system on environmental economic accounting. So basing it on national capitals, national nature capitals, yeah. I think if we rally for open data, we at the same time need to rally for something that also provides benefits to the provider communities.
The biggest benefit is the open data, actually, because they're open for anyone. Anyway, yes, please.
Yeah, we'd like to comment on that as well. I invite you to reach out the products that we are producing in our department as well. Hot topic in DSI for sure, but also some topics related to genetic resources. I don't know if it's clear that I am making kind of the differentiation, although at the end you know that there is a connection, but definitely the discussions are going in different directions or in parallel sometimes, and that's why I'm making the distinction. However, one of the things that our group is doing is providing data to answer those questions and to bridging this gap between policymakers and what the community is doing, which sometimes leads to problems and decisions that happens, bad decisions that happens because information is not available or simply they don't know what is going on. So it's important to do that, and something that our group is trying to do is provide this information and then make the proper decision. Thank you.
Yeah. Jose?
I would like to get a sense for how people feel about free, open usage of data for LLM training by commercial companies, because that's something that we're struggling with. If there are any, I think on one extreme, open data access is something that we all advocate and like. But on the other hand, this data is being trained, is being used for training and then used on a profit-based framework where profits are never shared with the providers. So there's kind of an unfair situation.
Yeah, if I may comment on that, Jose, actually it depends on the license, because if you publish your data in public domain or even CC BY only, nobody can prevent anyone to use this data for commercial purpose. So you, by providing your license, you allow that, your data to be used for that. There are more restrictive licenses like non-commercial and so, but this is how we understand it, yeah. But it's a lot of discussions now, I know this, yeah.
Yeah, I just see a message from Erik Kusch, who said that he has some internet connection problems, but he is available on the chat, on the Oxford Journal chat, and he is able to answer questions there if you have any questions for him.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Just a little bit more on the World International Property Organization Treaty. The treaty's agreement under the Berne Convention for the protection of works and the rights of authors in the digital environment. Everybody is bound by it, even if you're not a signature of the Berne Convention. The WCT mentions two subject matters to be protected by copyright: computer programs, whatever the mode or form of their expression, and compilations of data or other material, databases, in any form which by reason of the selection or arrangement of their contents constitute intellectual creations. The intellectual creations is the one that's very difficult. Some law cases suggested that a telecommunications company making a telephone book is not an intellectual creation. It's just putting stuff in alphabetical order. There are three rights granted to authors: the right of distribution, the right of rental, and the right of communication to the public is the right to authorise any communication to the public by wire or wireless means, including the making available to the public of works in a way that the members of the public may access the work from a place and at a time individually chosen by them. The quoted expression covers in particular on-demand interactive communication through the internet. So it goes on, there's a lot more about that. But it's worth, if you're working in this field, to look at WIPO. WIPO is particularly, I think the words here, the treaty is open to state members of WIPO and to the European community.
Yeah, comments on that or other questions? I think it's getting more and more complicated, yeah? In many aspects of our life and work in science, and it's getting more difficult to do our job in general. Yeah, Patrick.
Answer for the Swiss Institute of Bioinformatics and probably for Elixir, because the strategy is the same. So each time there is a new business, the company creates a new copyright. So you remember in the 80s, there were no such things like text and data mining license. And people were doing text and data mining. And then because once someone realized that, oh, we could make money out of it, they started to have a small section on text and data mining, and that was forbidden. Of course, all the countries rejected this small, tiny copyright law that all libraries all over the world signed stupidly. But and there has been a new framework. TDM is now widely open. So you have something that is free, it's free, it's free, it's free, and then someone realized can make money, and they change the law. They change the license, by the way, and the law may not even be respected because they don't care about the law. But what is really sure is that that is not our job to enforce the law. Okay, I think I'm struggling every day with my librarians colleagues that consider that they should act as gatekeeper. And I think this is exactly the type of view that should be rejected. Researchers, or the research community, or the research infrastructure community should not act as a gatekeeper unless there are clearly things that we should not violate. And this is the position of SIB. So we're going to continue to do CC by CC0 if possible, CC by 4.0, because in Switzerland, you cannot go beyond CC by 4, actually, for legal reasons. So we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to fight against any tentative to extend the copyright law and the authorships. You know, it's now 70 years, and if you let them guys do that, it's going to be 100 years, and it's going to be wonderful for the widows, but it makes no sense for research.
We have just a couple of minutes for last comments. Pat?
So as you know, I'm involved a lot in checking at all these new EU rules and guidelines and so on. And that makes it sometimes also administratively very difficult. And also at the EU, there are so many different units and departments that they sometimes make recommendations and rules that contradict themselves. Where on one hand, they push a lot the European Open Science Cloud, where everything should be open to everyone, and they have difficulties to advance. That in the last meetings I was there, they passed much more work to try to convince people to make it open and how to overcome all the rules that makes that it's not open, than really working on what they should do. And they even say themselves, ironically, that their acronym doesn't mean anything anymore, compared how much pressure they have on the other side from the EU with all the rules of what they called strategic autonomy, where they don't want, like, for example, with the IE Act, that we use systems developed outside Europe. And if we use them, they put many rules or additional cost. For example, we pay 15 to 20% more to Google Enterprise so that they guarantee that the data of the EU projects stay on EU servers. So with all these rules, we actually just make the US even richer. So I don't think that's what the EU wanted. So I think we need big discussion also and be open when we submit EU project and discuss with the program officers for new calls, that they have to be a bit more reasonable. There are fantastic calls in Digital Europe where TEDWIC is not allowed to go because our headquarters is in San Francisco and our branch in the Netherlands doesn't count to be in that Digital Europe calls. So we have to stay in Horizon projects because they wouldn't accept, because of the strategic autonomy, an association that has headquarters in the US in those calls. So it's becoming very difficult if you want to do something. Or you have to sign all kinds of papers that you are in no way influenced by a government or get any cent from the US government to go on board. But it makes our life really, really difficult. So I think it's time that our community a bit stands up and say, look into all these rules and don't be so contradictory and let us work.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. It also reminds me one of the stories we heard on the first day in the plenary lectures about tracing back collection permits for collections for different specimens, restriction specimens from research, to do research on that. So can you imagine how you can do that for 1,000 insects in a collection? Some have been collected without any permit, some have been collected at the time when permit didn't exist at all. How to deal with that? It's just creating a huge problem, by people who probably have never worked with collections. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a comment from Donat in the chat. He said, so far we have liberated 1 million treatments and over 500,000 scientific illustrations made accessible via the biodiversity literature repository over the last 10 years, and no complaint whatsoever from the publishing industry.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a wonderful project, but Plazi has not, for example, they're not data mining Elsevier. They're not data mining a publisher that would actually kick up a fuss. They're largely, I mean, it's either like Pinsoft journals, which are free, Taxo, which is Map Press, which is a family business in New Zealand, who are not going to be in a position to sue. So there's a slight element of he's avoiding danger. Very, very few. He's not. Yeah, yeah. So, but if he was doing something with threatened Elsevier, they would sue. I mean, he's not.
But
librarians keep on saying this. I've been doing all stuff with Elsevier, TDM for 25 years, and they know it, and they never sue me. And I'm very happy if they want to sue me.
Yeah.
I'm here, guys. This is typically, the stuff that I hear from the librarians, but in practice, it does not happen. You know, we even have been sued by Elsevier because the library at the ETH in Zurich was distributing internally to the university copies. Okay, it went to the court, and we won. You know, so of course. This is the one case I know where we have been sued and we won. But in principle, these guys, they don't move because we are researchers.
Yeah, they may, yeah. But Rod, if I may also comment, Zhang was, well, this is the owner of Magnolia Press, who is publishing Taxo. He was at our workshop in Geneva. Just, yeah, and I didn't see any sign that he tries to chase or sue Plazi. He probably understands the importance of this kind of dissemination for his publishing business. And everybody should understand that. Maybe Elsevier, because they do their own knowledge bases inside the company, and so I don't know, but I think Taxo must be happy that their content is distributed in this way and cited. Anyway,
it's probably to their benefit in a sense, you know. Of course, if we would decide hub at large scale, maybe that will be a problem. But the way we do is not that, you know. It's a different business that we have.
The reality is we don't matter.
But you want to comment or?
Yeah, I got a mail this week from my colleague that Elsevier just changed what they put under their article. Oh. And it says literally all rights are reserved, including those for text and data mining, IE training, and similar technologies. And she just found it out this week that they changed it.
So this one is called by the European law an abusive clause, because we have TDM. You see, but of course, they can still claim it in the contract.
Actually, what Jutta explained in this directive, there are two articles. The first one says that it's free for scientific use, that you can research, that you cannot forbid. And then there is the Article 3, or point 3, that says that editors and owners can opt out if they say it clearly and in an appropriate manner. What you can interpret how you want. Yeah. And within the IE Act that I analyzed, they are trying to look into this and to try to find clarifications that we at least know what we can to do and what is a proper manner to say that you forbid text and data mining.
Yeah. Jutta, maybe last.
Yeah, there are a couple of more comments in the chat, but we are running out of time, so I think we need to leave it.
Let's finish with them and with Jutta comments. That will be the last. Yeah. Just doing.
Okay. There was a comment from David Fischmüller regarding the use of commercial LLMs ingesting our open content. We as a community have decided to share our data under free licenses because it benefits us as well. Many of the institutions represented fall technically not under the non-commercial clause, but regardless of this, I would like to offer a different perspective regarding the LLMs. I would rather live in a world where large commercial LLMs are trained based on the high quality data from our community than from that of other sources with their biases and quality issues.
Jutta, the last comment for today before we finish.
I would like to come back to what Jose asked us about large AI companies using our data and not providing any benefits back to our community, which is this kind of tension we struggle with. We really want open data because it benefits us also. But on the other hand, as infrastructures, we also need funding. And like we do all the work and there needs something appropriate needs to come back. And it was interesting, and earlier this year, I was at a conference where actually researchers were using pretty much the arguments that the Global South was putting forth in the Convention on Biological Diversity. So I think maybe we should go there because the Global South, there are regions and countries who propose really good way. Well, I don't know. We have to explore that, but who propose ways to cut this kind of like coordinates, this tension, and propose how can we get out of it? Because like what Patricia is saying, that's kind of like escalation. Everybody is like, that is not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you all for being part of our last BiCIKL symposium. Thank you very much. And I wish you a pleasant evening.
Just a reminder for people that recordings will be made available soon. And recordings from yesterday are already available, I've seen.
Sometimes it seems to work. Sometimes. No, but I need to check how many times. Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.